We have two very impressive men here. We're going to be talking about the dive team in Washington County, how it started. I'm going to let Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel tell you about it from the West Bend Fire Department. Also, Allenton Fire Chief John Breyer in studio as well. Guys, great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks, Tom.
Two guys here. I can just imagine you're busy. We appreciate this time. And, of course, Chief Breyer, we've told you many times, we appreciate this. The Washington County Fire Chiefs Association, this is what we do. And good to just talk from tips, really timely things, right, Chief? That's what we do here.
Right, and
yeah.
This was one of the things that, came through this Chiefs Association was the organization of the dive team and how it got started. Unfortunately, it resulted from a tragedy happening, but it's making better things for our residents because of that. And it was spearheaded through the Chiefs Association. And again, that collaboration of those 13 agencies and the Sheriff's Department and Emergency Management and the Tech School to get this to our residents that we protect. It's another resource that they get as a benefit being in area protected by Washington County Fire Departments.
Mm. We're going to learn more about what they do, again, with the dive team. What kind of job is it? Who's on it? Get to know the members a little bit. 21 total, according to Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel, who again joins us, West Bend Fire Department. And Chuck, good to meet you, first of all. Great to have you in. Thanks for coming. How long have you been with the West Bend Department now?
I'm with West Bend for 25 years.
Okay. So that's a long time. That's a good run. My goodness, that's great. How did you start, or how did it all? I assume you kind of stepped into this deputy chief position at some point, but how did it all start for you at the department?
I've been in the deputy chief's position for 2 years. I was lieutenant for 14 years. Prior to that, been a member of the dive team since the dive team started in 2003. January 21st, 2003 was the date of the accident when Michael Mann had a snowmobile accident on Cedar Lake. From there, the family really spearheaded the dive team. It was approved by the county board in March of 2003, and that year the Mann family raised over $90,000 to start the dive team.
Now, the incident that brought this on, as again we stay with Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel for a moment here from the West Bend Fire Department. Chuck, could you tell us again about this incident, what happened here, and unfortunately a tragedy, which again it sounds like through some votes, through some action, now we have this dive team, which really makes a big difference. But at the time, what was the situation? So this accident happened. He was on a snowmobile, and a dive team did not exist at that time.
Correct.
Right. So okay.
There was two individuals on the snowmobile. One was able to get out. Michael was not at the time. They had rescue workers there at the time. The county only had surface rescue suits that we could get somebody out of the water if they were still on the top. So we did not have a dive team. The dive team was requested from Waukesha, which took over an hour, almost 2 hours to arrive. They were able to see Michael in the water, but the depth was too deep to actually go down and get him. So it was very frustrating on everybody's part, from the rescue workers to the family. So that's what really spearheaded this to get a dive team in our county.
And now with the dive team, what kind of a difference does that make?
Since we started the dive team, every year we have a couple of call-outs. The last couple of years it hasn't been for a rescue, but the Sheriff's Department has requested for recovery for, if there's a possible weapon that they thought might have been thrown in the lake, or in Hartford here with the missing police chief's hat.
Oh, yes, exactly.
I believe they had divers go in there and look for those things. So we do, the Sheriff's Department will do the recovery part of it. We do the rescue part of it until it becomes a recovery, and then the Sheriff's Department takes over from there. They do participate in the rescue portion of it also, though.
You're referring to, of course, Officer Sugar, an officer, in fact, the only police officer in Hartford that unfortunately was shot and killed on duty, and his hat was stolen from the lobby. It is back, and it's been recovered, and as you mentioned, the dive team was a big part of that. It was found, I believe, was it a retention pond? Anyway, found in some kind of unusual situation like that. So, yeah, it again showing you the difference and what can come of it and how important that is. Allenton Fire Chief John Breyer joining us as well. And Chief, again, with all this in mind, with this dive team, I can just imagine how it helps. Again, from, well, as we just talked about, from a missing hat, from different situations this time of the year, everybody on the ice fishing.
Right, especially the weather we're having this year.
Sure.
We got, days of 40, 50 degrees. You might get some thawing. Now you get freezing weather overnight, or you get 10 degrees, for a week. Now you got that slushy layer in the middle there. So what might seem like good ice isn't. And again, as responders, you call 911, they're gonna send the closest agency there, and not everybody has divers, but we have that access to call dispatch saying we need the dive team activated. They tone them out, and then they assemble. Gear starts arriving. That's there. So then the agency whose area it is, if they have divers available, some of them can start if they've got adequate resources and equipment, because some departments do maintain a lot of their stuff themselves. To the standards of the dive team, it's all set up that it has to meet our specifications. Their divers have to meet the same training and practice evolutions and all that hours, and stay up to date with all their certifications as required. So if we need it, let's say in Allenton, if we need it, we could request a dive team. They come, they assemble there, and it's working under the ICS system, the Incident Command System, as a tactical resource that get them in, have them do what they need to do. Then you're coming out. It's still that agency's scene. It's in their jurisdiction, but they're using that as a technical resource that we don't have to wait a long time to get there. I mean, there's still going to be a little bit of time for them to get assembled, but it's not going to be hours. It's going to be minutes in some cases. So it's great. And then we mentioned about how they helped with finding the hat and stuff. You might say, well, why did they use something like that? It wasn't criminal or whatever. It's also practice for those people. The state,
Sure.
You got to practice your skill to master your craft and stay efficient with it. So it's important to have those. Now, with that being said, we don't want everybody calling for every little thing like that, because we've got a limit to whether it's useful training or not. A lot of times we'll get that with acquired structures. People say, oh, I heard you guys burn buildings down. Well, yeah, if we don't get a training value out of it, it doesn't do anything for us, so it has to work both ways, in a PR situation like that. So, but I think the county as a whole is really benefiting the residents, because they don't have to have those resources locally and pay to keep that equipment on a local thing. It can be spread out throughout the county as a whole a little bit easier. The reason is the county had to make a resolution to do that is because we were using the sheriff's department. They were spearheading it, but they didn't want to do it if they didn't have the support from the fire department, again, because of staffing and man hours and those types of things. And then you got transition of people. So and we do in our agencies as well, but by having a pool of 13 agencies to come from, you can get a pretty good group of people assembled. So and if you got one or two people who are interested in diving, it's hard for one agency to maintain just those two people, whereas if they're part of a group of 20, it's a little bit more efficient for us.
Absolutely. And Deputy Chief, again, the time that's saved here, I can imagine, I'm sure every situation is different, but can you touch on, again, how important that is? Time is of the essence, I can just imagine, when you guys get a call.
Time is of the essence. They call it cold water rescues or survival. Every lake in Wisconsin is cold water year-round, so
that's for sure.
It qualifies as a cold water rescue, and the survival rate is a lot higher for these people because the temperature of the water actually slows the body down, and it basically saves it. It keeps it oxygenated because the pulse rate slows down as it cools, and it keeps it just enough that the survival rate is higher than normal. So we do have 4 fire departments on the team along with the sheriff's department, and we are split into north and south, and basically 33 is a lot of the Highway 60. Highway 60 is the line for north and south, and more help is requested as needed. It does take a large amount of divers, especially in winter, because you can't do multiple dives in this temperature. Once you do your dive, you come out, you're pretty much done. So if it's a involved dive, you're going to need more divers on the scene. As far as training is concerned, we start out with 8 different classes that the divers have to do. Anything from ice dive to open water diving to night diving to deep diving. We many times in the lakes around here, we're diving in situations where you can't see your hand in front of your face. You are in silt sometimes over your head that you don't know your depth until because you have to go down to where there's solid ground to actually feel and do your search, because things are going to go down that far. So it is very challenging around here. We do require 12 dives a year for each diver, and in December they do a skills review in a pool where they go through all of the diver rescue themselves skills to make sure that they're safe in there too.
Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel joining us from the West Bend Fire Department. Allenton Fire Chief John Breyer as well. And guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and continue. If you guys have time, that'll work. We'll talk more about the dive team in Washington County. Again, how important it is. 21 total members. And as Chuck just mentioned there, the 12 dives needed a year. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit more. And again, some of the challenge involved here. And again, I can just imagine all the success stories as well and how this certainly pays off. And again, around the Washington County area. We'll continue in just a moment as we continue with Allenton Fire Chief John Breyer, also Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel joining us from the West Bend Fire Department, and we appreciate the Washington County Fire Chiefs Association as we touch base with different members of the association and talk about different aspects of safety, very timely issues. And today, focusing in on the dive team of Washington County. We're going to touch on the types of rescues they respond to, and again, how they're funded. Where does the money come from? There's a big fundraiser coming up in March. We'll tell you about that. Chuck, to start with you, again, the types of rescues. Can you tell us what you guys face? Is it usually on the ice?
Since the accident in 2003, we have not had an ice rescue.
Okay.
Our rescues have come in the summertime at swimming holes throughout the county, anywhere from Mothie Lake to Kiwanis Park to some of the lakes down in Richfield. So those were where a lot of the our rescues came from.
So when you arrive on the scene, can you tell us maybe what you guys are looking for, again with a typical scenario, and maybe how many guys you have come out, or does it depend on the situation and the call?
The call's going to come into the local fire department first, and whether the local fire department is on the dive team or not, from the dispatcher's information, they can request the dive team. They can request the dive team, the whole dive team, or just their section, and the sheriff's department responds to all dive calls. From there, it takes a minimum of 3 divers to get the rescue started. The department that requested is starting to gather information of last seen points, what the person is wearing, things like that, so we at least know where to start our dive rescues. On the ice, it's a little bit easier because you're going to look for the hole in the ice, and that's where you start your rescues. Sure. But in the summertime, you find that even people that see the person go down have different stories of where they are, where to start from. So it's very difficult to do that. But training-wise, we do the open water, we do the ice diving. We try to do some dives at night because every type of dive has different hurdles you need to cross for them to be successful.
John Breyer, certainly the challenges involved here. This when you're on this dive team, a lot of factors.
Yeah, and from an agency that if it's in your jurisdiction, just because you're bringing a dive team in, that doesn't relieve you of your duties. It's a tactical resource you're using, so you're the support for them. That minimum 3 divers, you're going to take 6 to 9 people to support their actions, because everything's got to be accounted for, safe, those types of things. You're looking for rescue points as far as if we're bringing them up here, where do we take them, where do we take this patient, what kind of treatment we've got. So those resources got to be available. You're working with ways of removing a patient or a victim if need be. So you might be getting some belay lines, ground or surface support, maybe like Chuck had mentioned earlier, pinpointing the area. Open water is difficult. You got a 10-acre lake, narrowing it down to a 10-foot square section is going to take some time. So you need to do that, and you might be procuring some resources locally, or you may have some of your own as far as if we've got to get out, a quarter or a half mile into the lake or not. If it's close to the shore, again, a different scenario. So a lot of things factor into that, but you're busy, and so the support services that local agency has, they might be calling in another department as well for additional resources, because all efforts are going on optimum outcome, hoping for the best for all situations, and we're going to do whatever means necessary to make that as successful as possible. So it's when you look at it, it's similar to any other situation, except it's tactical as far as the dive part of it. You got specialized training, specialized people that are able to do that, similar to a hazmat situation. We all know awareness and emergency is emergency. We can narrow it down, but when it gets down to the real technical nuts and bolts of the individual thing, that's where you need that specialized person. Similar to going to a doctor, your general family practitioner can tell you where you need to go, but a lot of times they might recommend you to that specialist, and this is a resource that we have in our county that's a specialist mainly for water type rescues.
John Breyer joining us, Allenton Fire Chief. We have Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel joining us from the West Bend Fire Department. Chuck, in terms of how the dive team in Washington County is funded, can you go through that? Where does the money come from?
The Sheriff's Department has a budget for their dive team. The fire departments are primarily funded through fundraising, which is spearheaded still by the Mann family 15 years later. We do have our big fundraiser is a bowl-a-thon, which is coming up on March 3rd at the Kingpin. It's always a good time for everybody. Great prizes, reasonable, $30 a person. Get you a catered meal at the end. But that is our largest fundraiser, and that pretty much funds new suits and training of new divers. The suits that we wear pretty much have like a 5 to 8 year expectancy, and some of ours have, through good treatment and taking care of them, have gone 15 years. And so now it's time to start replacing those with suits that are made for the individual diver, which makes it a little bit less stress-free, makes it easier, less work for that diver to do his job.
So the funds go a long way, and you mentioned the event coming up on March 3rd, the fundraiser, the bowl-a-thon, which is awesome. How do you get involved with that? Do folks need to sign up, or can you just show up that day, or what do they do there?
There is flyers available. They can contact the West Bend Fire Department for more information if needed. But again, it's a good thing. Some of the other funding that we have is from organizations like the Tavern League. The county and the state organization both give $500, so totaling $1,000 a year for the dive team. We do raffles. We just started. We have a raffle that we're giving out two scholarships in Michael Mann's name as part of the dive team, and it's for people that are going to school for corrections, for criminal justice, for fire science, or for paramedicine, in hopes that when they do get into the career that they come forward and join the dive team with us, so we can keep this organization going.
It's a special group, and they do great work. 21 members of that dive team in Washington County, and Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel, great to have you in the West Bend Fire Department. You guys have a great department. Good to meet you, and good to learn more about the dive team, what it's all about, again, where the money comes from, and again, all started back in 2003. So pretty amazing, and in terms of what they're able to provide right here in Washington County. Chief, that's John Breyer. That That says it all, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
we have them here. Yeah.
The reason fire chiefs was the one that spearheaded this is when the Mann family wanted to put this together, they wanted to donate it, but also people who wanted to help donate and get recognition for it, and then claim it as a charitable contribution. They couldn't do that to a municipality or a county. So they came to the Chiefs Association because we are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Then their donation is tax deductible. So that's how the Chiefs Association got organized with the dive team. So anything you're doing with the bowl-a-thon or those things, those are tax deductible donations to the agency. And the Mann family, like I say, they're still very involved with that today. That's really what keeps it going. And you know, they know that the supporters that do that, they're claiming a deduction for it if they want to, and knowing that it's really helping others, so that they don't have to, unfortunately, live the nightmare that they had to go through. So like I say, not a lot of people would keep that stamina for that long, and they're really great to work with, and our county as a whole is really grateful for them stepping up to do that, because it brought a resource that we didn't have, that we probably would have been very difficult unless somebody really, you know, had a special place in their heart for it. It probably wouldn't have happened, and we're glad it is. So now it's up to us to make sure it keeps it going, and that continuation. You know, you're always going to have transition, you're always going to have turnover in any organization. So we make sure that stays as a priority, because we don't want our residents to lose what they've had for the last 15 years. And you know, keeping that up is a daily task, obviously, like anything else we do. But it's one of those things that you hope you never need it, but you're certainly glad you have it available when that time does come.
Well put. John, again, the Washington County Fire Chiefs Association, remind us who is a part of this, and it's a great group.
Yes, it's the 13 fire departments in the county. That's Allenton, Boltonville, Fillmore, Germantown, Hartford, Jackson, Kewaskum, Colesville, Newburgh, Richfield, St. Lawrence, Slinger, and West Bend. And then along with the Washington County Emergency Management, the Washington County Sheriff's Department, and Moraine Park Technical College. They make up the Washington County Fire Chiefs Association. And again, this is just one example, the dive team, of what that organization brings as collaboration of working together for a common goal. In a month or so, we'll talk about another thing that the association did in the county, and that's the hazmat team. We'll be bringing someone in a couple months about that, and it works very similar to this. Each department supports it through members or resources, and then it doesn't have to fall on one jurisdiction area as far as burden of keeping that up. It's shared. You know, every department that has equipment, whether it be the dive team or the hazmat team, you know, you're gonna all do a little bit in your own operating budget, but by having that collaboration of 13 or 14 people together, it's not so much of a burden for any one agency. And then the other thing is, by sharing it with everybody, you're able to keep your people better trained, because there's more activity, there's more situations where it's needed, more opportunities to train and practice with each other. And then just the cooperation of the agencies when you get on scene in an emergency. That's not the time to be dealing with the politics of any organization, and we really don't have that in our county. Chuck and I were talking about that in the lobby before you came out. I mean, there's a lot of counties around us that are envious of what we have for emergency services in the county, and that's a credit to not only those agencies but the residents we serve, because you know, we're there for them when they need it.
Well put, man, and it's good to have it. You mentioned the hazmat, just another great example in terms of emergency services, another huge part of it, and such an important team. Guys, we need to go. Great to have you. Good discussion today. Thanks for teaching us about this dive team. Good information, good to learn more. And Deputy Chief Chuck Beisel, West Bend Fire Department. Thanks, Chuck. Good to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You bet. And of course, Allenton Fire Chief John Breyer. Thanks, John. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate it.
We'll see you soon. Very good.